All right. Hello to everybody or anybody who might be watching this. I know my last video I talked about my experiences with vacations and mentioned that I was going away. But since I'm now back, I figured I would talk about my experiences with this specific vacation uh, with where I am now. So as I mentioned, I went to San Diego for Comic Con. Uh, Started out as well, someone who is very disorganized, a bit of a procrastinator. So I almost missed my flight. uh, Something that definitely adds anxiety, um, you know, to the whole situation. But I didn't miss the flight. In fact, even though I was one of the last couple people on the plane, and it's Southwest, which is you pick your own seat. I still somehow managed to get an aisle seat. I prefer a window where I can just kind of sit there and in the corner and mind my own business. But anything's better than middle, right? Anyway, so it was I live on Long Island, so I had a pretty long trip. We had a layover in Baltimore for a couple of hours, and then fly to San Diego. I got there, and as I said, this was my first time renting a car, and I wasn't sure where to go. I mean, there were signs saying, "Oh, car rental this way," and I went outside, and I'm looking for the car rental place before I realized that it's not actually at the airport. You had to take a shuttle, or like a bus to the car rental place. So again, something was a little anxiety, but it wasn't that horrible. Once I got to the car rental place, you fill out all the paperwork. The guy I dealt with was nice. He, because I was wearing a superhero shirt and even had like a superhero suitcase. He knew what I was in for, and I actually had a nice conversation with him. Uh, get out, pick my car, and I'm heading out, waiting for someone to, let me out. I guess they inspect the car or whatever before you leave. And the idiot I am in the wrong lane. I am in the lane for the buses to exit. I have to, lady ends up make me back up, and go to the other through the one of the other exits. So I did feel like a bit of an idiot, but I felt I was able to brush it off easier than I would have in the past. Um, so then there's getting to the hotel, and get to the hotel, and I'm unsure about the parking situation there. Finally, I just parked in front. I walked in I think without even any bags, or maybe just one of the small bags. And I actually asked them because there was a garage there, but the gate was down. Um, I guess I could park in the garage, but it was, they would charge you per day, and they said you could also park on the street, but apparently it's like if it's not painted, and admittedly there were places where like, is this? There were some that were obviously painted and some that obviously were, but there were certain points where it was like, was it just discolored or was it painted? But yeah, I ended up. So the first day or two parking was a little tricky, but after that, I seemed to find spots relatively easy, at least around the hotel. Uh, and my first day there, even though I got in relatively early, because I'd been up the whole night before, and being in early West Coast time is not quite as early as being on East Coast time. Still, I pretty much just went to bed, and first day was just sleep. Then the second day I went to Comic Con, and now I've never been there before. Uh, and when I have, if you've watched some of these videos, I have a bunch of different superhero shirts and hats and whatnot. Uh, and I've never been a big short wearer, but I have a lot of superhero socks too. And you know, because I'm in San Diego, it's warm weather, although I mean it wasn't really hot there. It was probably hotter in New York when I was there. Uh, and super, I got superhero socks. So I figured let me just have everything, accessorized, I guess. And I'll say every day, I'm at Comic Con, so even with superhero socks and hat and shirt, you're not going to stand out too much because I mean, obviously the people in cosplay and the crazy outfits. But every day, at least one person mentioned something about what I was wearing, positively. So that was nice. But you're at Comic Con where you're with that type of people. Uh, it's funny because I mean, I've been to a couple of conventions before. There's one they used to hold out here at Long Island Icon. I always felt like, when I'm with people outside of stuff like this, I always feel like a big geek. But when I go to these places, I almost feel like I'm not geeky enough. But I did feel more comfortable than in the past. I did feel like I fit in a little bit at least. So yeah, so I went there and I didn't realize, you know, because it's such a big thing, how hard parking around, you know, the convention center was. So while I parked on the street at the hotel for Comic Con, I had to find a garage and driving around the streets once you get there and the streets are blocked off. I ended up parking over a mile away and still paying $40 a day to park. But you know I guess you do what you gotta do when you're on vacation. So I went I went by myself, which is uncomfortable, but I did, like I said, I did find myself talking to a couple people here and there. I wish I had planned it better, but not realizing, there are different panels and stuff, and most of the big ones are in this hall. If you know anything about Capcom, this Hall H, which I didn't know about ahead of time, where the line for it is like a Disney line on steroids. And once people get in, they can just stay in all day. So, you know, one morning I said, "Let me see if I can get in early." And at like 7:30 to 8 in the morning, it was rows of lines, like at maybe 10 tents full, and then a line that went across the street. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm not waiting all day to possibly get into one panel. Um, so I did this. Man, I spent a lot of time in the exhibition hall, where they're selling stuff and looking at different stuff. I so didn't have many encounters with celebrities, but I did meet, if you know about comics, Todd McFarlane, and this was just a random thing. I was at the McFarlane Toys booth, just looking at this really nice Walking Dead uh, setup, like miniature figures and everything. And I was taking a few pictures of it. And I didn't even know who was going to be there. Apparently, he was signing somewhere late in the day, but he just happened to be there. And he's like, oh, and he just walks, oh, give this guy one of the little figures. I can tell he's a real fan, and I just thought that was awesome. So I didn't notice he was just there was just an impromptu signing there. So I quickly ran over to another booth, bought a comic just so I had something for him to sign, and told him that I was a fan. I got into comics a little bit late. I was always into superheroes, but I didn't get into reading comics until later. And it was around the time Spawn started, so I mentioned that to him and told him what a big fan I was of his toys. I mean, I always think if you've ever seen his toys and action figures, they're great looking. They're not like the Star Wars figures I had when I was a kid. So I told him that, and signed my comic, said thank you. Although that something about that just left a weird, I don't know, comfortable feeling in me. But at the end of the day, I did it, and anyway. So after that, I'm a big fan of Chris Hardwick. Those of you don't know who he is. He was. I mean, years ago he was. He hosted Singled Out, but now he hosts the Walking Dead after show. Uh, you know, stand-up comedy podcast. So I got to go to his comedy show and a couple of his live podcasts. Fortunately, I didn't get to meet him, but one of the reasons I'm a fan of his is I like his take on stuff. He's someone who kind of seems to have it figured out when you listen to him talk, where how he got to where he is and his outlook on stuff. I just really like that, among the fact that he's someone who has, I guess, similar interests to me, and I like his sense of humor. And then I also got to meet, and I feel like I mentioned her in every podcast, but uh, Trisha Hirschberger, because she was there, meeting people. And when I saw she was there, I had to go and meet her because I felt her videos have had an impact on how I've progressed over the last year. So it was a meeting for, I guess it was her, it was like a bunch of people from SourceFed, which was her old YouTube channel. So there were a bunch of people out, it was outside, so for people who couldn't get in. And so I just kind of like hung on the outskirts. I didn't go right up because, still not a really outgoing people person, but I hung around and waited and, you know, slowly got closer. And she recognized me, which surprised me, even though I'd done a bunch of videos. I don't know how much she watches of them, whether she watches them or just, puts them on in the background and listens. And when I do her videos, I'm making the hair's down, and this situation, hair's back, shirt on, hat on. I wasn't sure if she would, I honestly, I didn't think she would recognize me. I only got to talk to her for a couple minutes, but I have to say she was really sweet, and it was one of the highlights of my vacation. She just, and I guess this is why I like her channel so much. She just had this way about her that made me feel good about myself, and I was able to tell her, you know, how much I've enjoyed her channel. Okay, so after that, a couple other things I did. So I did one of those Walking Dead runs. It's Walking Dead Escape. I think it's called. It was called. It was in Petco Park, which is the baseball stadium by there, and it wasn't really dangerous, but it is. There were kids, little kids with there too. So well, I'm not gonna say it's dangerous, but they do have you sign a waiver before you go in. And I also did. There was this thing called this Assassin's Creed experience, and there were two different parts. I did 2 different days. One was an obstacle course, just a small one. If you've ever seen American Ninja Warrior, it kind of looked like a mini version of that. I so I did that again. Both you had to sign a waiver. Wasn't great at it, but I got through it. And then they have what they call the leap of faith. It's a 25-foot drop into one of those big foam mats, like you see some people do. And I did that too. I got up there, and I will admit I have second thoughts, but uh, I guess the fear of jumping was not as great as the fear of chickening out. So I took the jump, or I guess the leap. Yeah, they tell you, you know, not to land straight up. Uh, to land on your back. I felt like I landed straight up. Not that I was trying to, but I only have so much control over my body when I'm in the air. But again, I landed and I was perfectly fine afterwards. So 3 things that I did where you had to sign waivers in case of injury, and with both the Assassin's Creed things, there were people who did get injured. I don't know if it was as seriously, but I did see they did say people got injured, and I did see people there being looked at medically. So then the day after Comic Con, I left 2 days after. So the day after, I'm just trying to pack everything up so I'm ready for the next day, and see if there's anything I can't fit in my suitcase and I want to ship home. Dressed, but I don't have my shoes on, and I was walking around the hotel room. I smacked my toe into my suitcase, and I didn't look at it till the next day. But the next day, when I took my sock off, huge black and blue my toe. That whole day after I hit it, after I bagged my toes, it was sore all day. And my point for mentioning this is just that I think it says something about taking risks. That I did 3 things where I guess there is considered some risk of injury, and I walked away unscathed, and I hurt myself walking around my hotel room. Yes, it's saying I'm a klutz and I'm not paying attention, but I guess there's some lesson in there about taking risks. Anyway, so that day I went out. I didn't do much. I went to the post office to send one thing home. I so I'm checking on my phone on the GPS for the post office, and there was a place there, and I was looking on the GPS. There's a place called the Tilted Kilt, which just sounded interesting. I thought, oh, a store that sells kilts. I looked at it. It was a restaurant. Uh, I guess it was described as kind of like a alternative to Hooters. I don't know if this is a chain or anything. I'd never heard of it before. Uh, but it seemed like simple, burgers and fried type stuff. And because the menu actually looked interesting, and it was right near where the place, the post office was going to go. Um, so that day I went out, and like I said, during Comic Con, the whole time I wore, you know, shirt, hat, and I wore shorts, and so everyone would see the socks too. And I really debated whether to wear shorts or not the day after Comic Con going out. Because it's one thing at Comic Con where you feel you kind of fit in with all these people, but outside, the feeling everyone is looking at you like that weirdo geek. But at the end of the day, I decided, you know what? I'm still on vacation. It's gonna feel a little uncomfortable, but I'm gonna do it. So I went to the post office, and then I went to the restaurant where not only was I there in my shorts, with the Spider-Man socks on, and eating at a table by myself, which, eating at a restaurant by yourself, I always feel is really uncomfortable. Um, Again, it's one of those things where I tried to keep pushing myself to do something that's uncomfortable. Uh, and the only other thing I did after that was I went to, for a couple hours, I figured I've been San Diego, I want to check out the zoo. And this is the positive side of wearing stuff like this. You're at the zoo, and while I am uncomfortable, worried about people, what people are thinking of me, all of a sudden you walk by and a kid goes, "Hey, look, it's Spider-Man." Um, and I like that kind of reaction from kids. I like kids. I don't know if I've always been more comfortable with them. So yeah. So the next day I went home. I got on the plane, and I didn't wear shorts on the plane, jeans, but I did wear I think it was a Star Wars shirt. And lady comes out and sits next to me, and I happen to see her, you know, putting this poster tube in up above, with the luggage, the storage area. So I realized, and then she goes to me when she sees the Star Wars stuff. She's like, "Oh, were you there for Comic Con?" Like, yeah, and we started talking. And I actually had a reasonable conversation with this woman I had never met before. Which, again, like I said, usually on the plane, I'm in the window seat and I just kind of mind my own business. It was nice to have this conversation. I mean, after a while, I ended up, you know, watching a movie or falling asleep. So most of this trip, I did talk to her, but it was nice to be able to have this conversation with someone. So I guess that's about it. Just some of my experiences with this vacation. And well, I wish I had planned some stuff out better, and it would have been nicer to have someone to go with me. I would say overall, I enjoyed the vacation, and it was a positive experience. So, all right, goodbye. And if you watch this, well, sorry for the length again, but thanks for watching. Bye.